Happy Sunday, boys and girls. It is time to get straight back into our book, The Monster of Shiversands, Cove. Now, we are up to chapter 11. Now, in chapter 10, Stan and Pearl had gone out to capture this creature, this huge sea monster that they'd both seen. But just at the moment that Stan thought he'd seen the monster out at sea, Harry the fairy turned up and started being quite annoying and pesky. And so, in chapter 11, let's see what happens and whether Stan and Pearl are able to actually capture this monster and stop it from being a threat to all the people in Shiversands Cove. The howling. What was it? I turned and gaped. It was Harry the fairy. His small, fairy head was thrown right back as he howled up at the huge bright moon. A chill went right through me, right from the top of my head to the ends of my toes. Something was happening to Harry. He was starting to grow taller, then taller still. And Harry was growing hairier, much, much hairier. Hairs were sprouting all over him. Thick hairs, dark hairs were growing all over his arms, his legs, his face, even all over his wings, everywhere. And still he howled and howled up at the huge moon, the huge full moon. "Run!" I said to Pearl, grabbing her hand. "Run!" We ran to the only place I could think of, the only building on Tide Island, Mildred Marchwold's writing room. We wrenched the door open, hurled ourselves inside, slammed the door shut and bolted it. Then we both stared out of the window, shocked and terrified. What was happening? How could Harry the fairy have turned into that towering shadow silhouetted against the huge white moon? How? And there it is. That's what Harry's turned into. He now had the snarling face of a wolf? He had huge hairy legs and huge hairy arms. His huge hairy wings were spread out and flapping. I cowered, and so did Pearl, as Harry, or whatever it was that Harry had become, raised his huge hairy face to the sky and howled. Howl after howl after howl. Blood-curdling howls, spine-tingling howls, howls that made my knees knock, my hair stand on end, howls that sent shivers right through me. "What is it? What is he?" said Pearl, quivering. "A monster. But what sort? What sort of monster is that?" "I don't know," I said. "A mix? Some horrible mix of werewolf and fairy? A were-fairy? Is that what he is?" "But we had plans for a sea monster," said Pearl, panicking more. "We had no plans for a were-fairy. No plans at all." She was clutching my arm now, and I clutched back. What could we do? Stay here and hide? Wait until the full moon was gone and he was Harry again? No, that monster, that were-fairy, it was part wolf, and wolves can smell things miles away. He'd smell us out. And he did, right then. His head went up and he sniffed the air. Then he turned and stared. He gave a snarl, and up he came, leaping and bounding over the rocks, a huge dark shadow on huge hairy paws. Pearl shrieked and backed away across the room. So did I, because now the were-fairy was here and staring right in through the window, vicious red eyes glowing bright as flames. He bared his huge sharp fangs, fangs made for ripping, made for tearing. He sniffed with his huge hairy nose, licking his lips with a slobbering tongue, and then he was gone. "Where is he?" said Pearl, her voice quivering. "Where?" "I don't know," I said. "I just don't know." But then we found out. Thud, thud, thud. The were-fairy was outside the door. We stood there listening to the noises, the loud grunting noises, the frightening noises, the hungry noises coming from outside as the were-fairy put his shoulder to the door. A thud, then a pause. A thud, then a pause. Something happened then to me. Something changed, because I knew this. That door was not built to keep out a were-fairy. I looked at Pearl and I saw by the furious light in her eye that the same thing had happened to her. So we can wait, I said. Pearl looked at me and nodded. Or we can do something, she said. And we did. It took us seconds to get into position. Pearl stood by the door, hand on the bolt. I stood to one side, up on the chair. The big heavy typewriter clutched in my arms. We listened to the were-fairy outside the door. A thud, then a pause. A thud, then another pause. A thud, and Pearl timed it perfectly. She unbolted the door, flung it wide open, just as the were-fairy's shoulder was thudding against it. In lurched the were-fairy, tottering and caught by surprise, all off balance. I was waiting. I raised the typewriter as high as I could, then brought it crashing down on the huge were-fairy's head. I hoped I'd knock him out and make him keel over, make him fall to the ground unconscious. I didn't. The were-fairy yowled. He yelped. He staggered. He clutched his head. He roared in pain, but he did not keel over. Still, we ran for it, back down the cliff path, over the rocks and toward the bridge. But 2 kids on foot cannot outrun a flying were-fairy. We heard the flap of huge wings behind us and the snarls of a were-fairy with a very sore head. Then he landed, blocking our path, a huge, hairy were-fairy, much taller than Dad, sniffing and snarling and licking his lips. We cowered, up there on the rocks. Water was behind us and below us. The were-fairy was ahead. Nothing could save us now. Nothing. Wow. So Stan and Pearl had set out that night to capture a monster, a sea monster that they'd already seen and they knew quite well. But now they're faced with something completely unexpected, a were-fairy. And we leave chapter 11 with them in real danger. Wow. So we've got 2 more chapters left. Chapter 12 is called The Chase, and we're going to have to wait until Wednesday for that one. So tune in on Wednesday, boys and girls, to find out what happens to Stan and Pearl and whether they will make it to chapter 13. Okay, in the meantime, boys and girls, stay safe and happy reading. Goodbye.